Hello and welcome back to the channel. I know that yesterday I uploaded a video about the Hyderfect murders from Unsolved Murders. Oh, there's Kitty, my precious kitty. Make sure you have a drink, probably a snack or two, and we are gonna be doing we'll be doing the impossible murder. The murder of Julia Wallace, bludgeoned to death in the parlor of her marital home in Liverpool, England, on January 20th, 1931. It is widely regarded as one of the most baffling of all unsolved crimes. The classic locked room murder mystery has fascinated crime writers such as Raymond Chandler and Dorothy L. Sawyer. Inspired the P.D. James novel The Skull Beneath the Skin, and also been the subject of a television drama, investigation documentaries, and numerous true crime books and articles in the press. The case also made British legal history. It was the first time that a murder conviction was overturned on appeal following a review of the evidence. Literally. William Herbert Wallace and his wife, Julia, lived in a small 3-bedroom row house on Wolverton Street in the poor district of Enfield, Liverpool. They had been married for 17 years. William had traveled widely as a young man, visiting both India and China. He was forced home by illness and met Julia a couple years after his return to Britain. William was now an insurance agent with the Prudential Assurance Company, while Julia was an amateur painter and pianist. In fact, both Julia and William were musically gifted, with William being an adept violin player. The couple would often play and sing duets together. Julia was exponentially intelligent, having studied philosophy and dabbled in chemistry. She claimed to be younger than she was. She was actually 17 years older than her 52-year-old husband. According to William, their marriage was harmonious, and friends and neighbors would testify that there was nothing to indicate otherwise. He also stated, "It was my wife's rigid rule to not admit strangers into the house when she was alone." You can see my cat in the back. My cat. On the evening of Monday, January 19th, 1931, 52-year-old William Wallace arrived at the Liverpool Central Chess Club at the City Cafe on North John Street. The club met every Monday and Thursday, but William was not a regular member. In fact, he had not visited the club for some time. William was known as an enthusiastic player rather than a good one, and only qualified for the second-class team. The club captain, Samuel Beatty, had taken a telephone call for Wallace and had a message for him. The caller had identified himself as R.M. Qualtrue and requested that Wallace should come to 25 Menlove Gardens East the following evening at 7:30 p.m. to discuss an insurance deal. I want to see him particularly, the man had said. The caller went on to add that he couldn't call back because it was his daughter's 21st birthday and he was particularly busy. William took Betty's note and put it in his pocket, telling Betty that he didn't know anyone by the name of R.M. Qualtrug, but would visit him tomorrow nevertheless. Times were tough in the Depression era of Britain, and Wallace foresaw the possibility of some much-needed money. The following evening, Wallace finished his day at work and at the insurance company and returned home where Julia had dinner waiting. When the couple finished eating, Wallace told her that he had a meeting with a man who could hopefully bring him some more insurance business. As Wallace put on his coat, he added that he would be home as soon as possible. Wallace set off for 25 Menlove Garden East. He hadn't heard of the address before, but knew the general area. He boarded a number 26 tram to Belmont Road, then a number 4 tram to Smith Down Road, and a 5A at Penny Lane Junction, which set off the Mangrove Garden at 7:15. During the journey, Wallace chatted with the conductor and a ticket inspector, mentioning that he was going to Menlove East on business. Upon alighting at Menlove Garden West, Wallace spoke to a woman coming out of her home and asked for directions to Menlove Garden East. The woman was unsure. Wallace continued up Menlove Gardens West and asked the directions from a man named Sidney Herbert. He told Wallace that there was no such street, at least to his knowledge. Wallace then knocked on 25 Menlove Gardens West, the home of Richard and Kate Mather, and asked if Mr. Qualtrug lived there. Told that he did not, Wallace headed towards Menlove Garden North, where he saw a man at a tram stop. He asked him for directions, but the man was from out of town and could not offer assistance. Realizing he was now at the top of Green Lane, where a friend of his, Joseph Cree, lived, Wallace knocked on his door. Receiving no answer, Cree and his wife had gone to the cinema. Wallace walked down Green Lane, where he saw a policeman, P.C. James Edward Sergeant, and asked him if he knew where Menlove Garden East was, and if he knew a Mr. Qualtrug. Apparently, finding the police officer a recipient listener, Wallace relayed the entire story regarding the call. Wallace also verified that the time with P.C. served as 7:45. Before heading home, Wallace went to the post office and asked again for directions to Menlove East. The clerk wasn't sure and suggested Wallace go to the news agents across the street. Shop assistant Nancy Collins and manager Lily Pinch listened to Wallace's story and finally convinced him that Menlove Garden East did not exist. His patience exhausted, Wallace made his way back home, pondering who R.M. Qualtrug could be and why he had seen fit to send him to a non-existent address on a cold, dark winter evening. Wallace later claimed that he spoke to no one on the way home. However, a near neighbor named Lily Hall claimed that she spotted the distant figure of Wallace in a conversation with a short, stocky man. My kitty. My precious kitty. Wallace arrived home around 8:45 p.m., only to discover that he was unable to open either his front or back door. Both doors appeared to be locked from the inside. His next-door neighbors, John and Florence Johnston, saw him standing outside looking worried and asked if he needed any help. He told them that he had been out for several hours and could not get into his house. However, while Mr. and Miss Johnson were present, he walked around to the back once again, and this time the door opened. "It's open now," he muttered to his neighbors as he entered the house. A ghastly scene met his eyes. Julia was laying in front of the gas fire in the parlor. She had been bludgeoned to death with a heavy object, hit with such force that her skull had been cracked open. "They've finished her. Look at her brains," William commented, with a surprising lack of apparent emotion to Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, who were standing behind him in the doorway. Police soon arrived to assess the scene and make a search of the house and surrounding area. They noted that there was no sign of breaking and entering, leading them to believe that Julia herself must have permitted the killer into the house. Enfield was in the grip of a spate of burglaries by a mysterious figure only known as Enfield Housebreaker. There was speculation that he could have been the killer, but no evidence tied him to the murder, and the crime did not fit his modus operandi. A small sum of money had been stolen from a cash box in the house, but the police decided that this was a ploy to give the impression that the murder was a result of a robbery gone wrong. The handling of the investigation left much to be desired. While exhuming the crime scene, officers wandered all over the house and smudged fingerprints that could belong to the killer. Moreover, the pathologist neglected to take the temperature of Julie's body, and therefore an accurate time of death was never determined. A forensic expert named John Edward Whitley McPhail, basing his diagnosis on the body rigor mortis, put the time at 8 p.m. However, rigor mortis would probably occur quite quickly in a frail, elderly person, such as Julia Wallace, and McFall later amended his estimate to be around 6 p.m. Another expert, Dr. Hugo Price, also put the time of death at about 6 p.m., adding, "I would give 2 hours either side." What was clear was the murder was frenzied and brutal. Blood was spattered across the room, indicating that the killer would most likely have blood on his clothes. In addition, a check of the house's sinks and drains revealed that they had not been used, indicating that the killer had left without washing any blood from his clothing or body. Although there was no direct evidence against him, police soon began to question whether William had killed his wife and engineered the meeting with the mysterious R.M. Quastruk to deflect suspicion from himself. They took the fact that William had asked various people for directions as a ploy to establish an alibi for the murder. It transpired that the phone call from R.M. Qualtrics had come from a payphone just 400 miles, around 366 meters, from the Wallace household. The payphone was close to the stop where Wallace had caught the train to the Liverpool Central Chess Club. However, Samuel Beatty, who had taken the call at the club, was adamant that the voice on the other end of the line was not Williams. Police found 5 people with the last name Coulter in the Liverpool area. All denied contacting the chess club. Investigators questioned why William had claimed that the back door of his home was jammed, but as soon as another witness were present, it miraculously opened. A raincoat was found beneath Julia's body. William didn't have a spot of blood on the suit he was wearing, so police speculated he could have worn the raincoat over his naked body as he carried out the murder to shield himself from blood splatter. Literally. This is Julia. This is the crime scene where her body was found. Her husband is right there. This is the detective at the back door. A police photograph of a suspect, Richard Gordon Perry, taken in 1934, 3 years after Julia Wallace's murder. Literally. Literally. Oh. Well, the police were building a case against William. The balance of evidence was beginning to tilt in his favor. Numerous witnesses placed him on the train around 7:06 p.m. that evening, while others claimed to have seen Julia arrive at approximately 6:45 p.m. One of the milk delivery boy who testified that he collected money from Julia between 6:30 and 6:45. This time frame implied that William would have only had about 20 minutes to murder his wife, clean himself up, dispose of the murder weapon, which was never found, hide the money that was missing from the cash box, and catch the tram. On February 2nd, 1933, William Herbert Wallace was arrested and charged with his wife's murder. He stood trial at Liverpool Assizes. Few more brutal murders can ever have been committed. This elderly, lonely woman literally hacked to death for apparent no reason at all, declared the prosecuting counsel Edward Hemorrhage, KC. During the trial, William seemed detached and spoke in a moderate tone while detailing the events connected to the murder. His evidence failed to impress the jury. An observer of the trial, crime writer F. Tennis J.C. wrote, "The jury did not like the man or his manner, which could have been either stoicism or callousness." They did not understand his lack of expression, and they knew it hid something. It could have hidden sorrow or guilt, and they made their choice. He concluded, "People of unpleasing personality should be advised never to go into the witness box." The fact that Wallace's round metal framed glasses resembled those of the notorious wife murderer Dr. Crippen probably did not help his case. All the evidence against Wallace was highly circumstantial and no motive was put forward. The trial only lasted 4 days and the jury reached a verdict after deliberating just for 1 hour. Wallace was found guilty of his wife's murder, sentenced to die on the gallows. 1 month later, Wallace became the first man in Britain to have a conviction for murder dismissed on the grounds that it was not supported by the evidence. Wallace was now a free man, but was still met with general suspicion. He moved to a bungalow on the Mersey River, where just 2 years later he died. Some said that stress and a broken heart contributed to his sudden demise. Wallace went to his grave protesting his innocence. He was buried beside his wife. If William Herbert Wallace was not responsible for his wife's murder, then who killed her? In 1984, true crime writer Roger Welks speculated in his book, Wallace, the Final Verdict, that the real murderer of Julia Wallace was Richard Gordon Perry, a former work colleague of Wallace. Another former colleague told police that Wallace had reported Perry for wrongdoing, which led to Perry being fired. In his book, Wilkes claimed that Perry wanted revenge on Wallace, so he lured Wallace from his home with a phone call and committed the murders while Wallace was out searching for the non-consistent address. While researching the case, Wilkes found a new witness, a retired mechanic named John Parkes, Parkes, that kind, not the park. So, let me find where I left off. Who claimed that on the night of Julia Wallace's murder, he had hosed down Harry's car while cleaning the car's interior. He came across a blood-stained glove, which Perry quickly snatched away. John Gannon's book, The Killing of Julia Wallace, named another suspect in the murder, Joseph Caleb Marsden. Gannon theorized that Wallace knew that he could not have long to live and decided that he did not want to spend his final years with his hated wife. According to Gannon, Wallace hired Perry to make the bogus call in order to provide Wallace with a cast-iron alibi for the time of the murder. However, Gannon contended that whether Wallace nor Perry committed the murders, but Marsden. Gannon asserted that Marsden was about to marry into a wealthy family, but Wallace had discovered that he was having a sexual relationship with Julia. This gave Wallace the opportunity to blackmail Marsden into killing his wife for him. During the initial investigation, however, Marsden's name cropped up as nothing more than an acquaintance of both Wallace and his wife. Since 1931, the so-called perfect murder of Julia Wallace has been investigated and reinvestigated numerous times. Nevertheless, experts still have condescending opinions on William Herbert Wallace's guilt. Many wild rumors circulate, from William having an affair with Julia's sister to Julia being overinsured and killed by William for the money. One of the most imaginative theories in the case is that William was a secret disciple of occultist Aleister Crowley, who had numerous affairs behind his wife's back. However, no evidence has ever substantiated any of these speculations. The murder of Julia Wallace continues to defy explanation. The crime novelist Raymond Chandler Finley referred to the case as the non-peril of all murder mysteries, the impossible murder, because Wallace couldn't have done it and neither could anyone else. Literally. I want your guys' thoughts on this case. And if any sleuths share this video, I challenge you to solve this fucking crime. Those in Britain as well. Because that case is a Britain case. And I want people to literally solve it.